Let's see. I know it's 3 o'clock, y'all, and I hate running late. But we did have a last minute change in the room, so we're gonna wait for a couple key people to get here, and mainly our policy staff and legal counsel. So we'll get started in just a minute. I know we're scrambling a little bit. If you do want to sign up to speak to the bill, please sign up on the table. There's a sign-in sheet. We're going to leave that out for one more minute and then take that back up. So if you want to speak, sign up. Okay, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm so sorry about us having to change rooms at the very last minute. We went late on the House floor today and messed up everybody's schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the House Education Curriculum Subcommittee to order. Representative Clark, would you like to lead us in prayer, please?
Dear Lord, I just thank you for this time we have. Thank you for these bills that we have before us, God. And just help us to always put the kids first and just be with us and bless everyone in this room. In the name of the Lord Jesus, amen.
Okay, the first bill on the agenda today is actually my bill, House Bill 538. So I'm going to turn this meeting over to Vice Chairman Chokas, and then I will come down to present.
Cool. Where's Chair Lady Ballard?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
still behind you.
Okay, I'm looking for it. There we go. Well, super. Chair Lady Ballard, thank you. Thank you for bringing HB 538, and floor is yours.
So much. This is House Bill 538. I'm working from LC 491384S, and this is the Georgia Early Literacy Act. The purpose of this bill is to get our students reading on grade level by the end of third grade. The end of third grade marks the time when kids transition from learning to read to reading to learn. And reading on grade level by the end of third grade is one of the biggest predictors of later success in life. If you are reading on grade level at the end of third grade, you are more likely to graduate on time. You're more likely to just stay in school to begin with. You're more likely to be gainfully employed, and you are less likely to end up in jail. So we're talking about a few years of early childhood predicts your success for the rest of your life. Right now, between 36 and 56% of our state's kids are not reading on grade level when they finish third grade. That is a staggering number to me, between 36% and 56%. So what's in this bill, it gives teachers and students tools in their toolkit. Teachers are actually taught the skills to teach kids to read. And these are evidence-based. They are scientific principles to teach our children to read. They are the way most of us in this room were taught to read, using phonics, phonemic awareness, and to help them understand the parts of the words, the sounds, how each sound corresponds to a given letter. The teachers are given this curriculum, and they will help their children to have the strategies to go beyond third grade reading level. If you are taught which sound corresponds with which letter of the alphabet, you can use those skills to go on and on throughout your life. Another thing that this bill does, it is outlines a timeline for everybody to get on board with this curriculum from the Department of Education on down to our local school districts. And it is important to have a timeline so that we have a roadmap to serve our children and we don't just keep kicking the can down the road. And we cannot settle with 56% of our children not reading at grade level. That is unacceptable. So that's the bill. It gets kids reading.
Super. Oh, super. Madam Chair, thank you for that presentation. We've got a couple of questions from the subcommittee. We're going to start with number 17.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairwoman. I almost missed your meeting.
I know.
Okay, so I'm really just having a chance to look through this, and I absolutely support that we have to do something to ensure that our kids are reading, which is why we've really been working on this, and we know Georgia made this a priority. But as I'm reading through this, I'm really trying to be clear about how will this be implemented? How will it be paid for? And is this going to be statewide?
It's going to have to be statewide because we don't want one school district to be left behind.
Right.
We want all our kids reading regardless of where they live, regardless of their socioeconomic status.
Right.
And usually our departments, our local departments, they have money for curriculum purchases. So what they'll be given is a list of appropriate curriculums, and then that they'll be able to purchase that just like they do normal curriculum. I know in my school district, they purchase different things all the time.
So the first part is each school district is going to have to purchase a curriculum. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it'll be from a list.
Okay.
And for example, one school district I know was concerned that they'd already purchased some things, but they think it might go along with this. So they could, have that put on the list of approved.
Okay,
Curriculum.
I don't think you quite answering my question. So will this begin like at the kindergarten or pre-K to kindergarten? Because
Kindergarten.
you've got that transition from pre-K to kindergarten, and then the teachers first are going to go through an additional training. Because I think I heard
Yeah,
you say
they'll be trained. They will be trained
Okay.
to teach, because what I have heard from some teachers is they were never taught how to teach their kids to read.
Because we keep changing.
Because we keep changing.
I think I
Yeah.
heard you say we're going back to phonics.
Yes. And foundational principles. These are the foundational reading principles that put man on the moon, that won World War II, before we started playing with things.
Yeah, thank you. And then if we could put something in here to ensure that we don't change it again. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, number 16.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I also do believe this is a good bill. But I wanted to ask if there's an accommodation, because being I'm naturalized, I did live in the UK, and some of the spellings and the pronunciations are a lot different. So fundamentally, would this also cover English as a second language program? Would it also be applied in programs like that?
We don't deal with that specifically in this bill, but I think that with phonics and with the phonological awareness, you're working with, all of our letters are just basically symbols, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're symbols that have a pronunciation attached. And so you could definitely work with that with all kinds of kids to teach them this symbol means this sound.
Okay. Because you'd be surprised how many words can be.
Oh, I was a British Lit major, and it took me a long time to not spell things with an OUR at the end of them.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, number 28.
Hey, thank you for bringing this. I think this is something that's really important. When I studied English in college, I actually had to take a class on linguistics. And in that class, we had to, go over this and how children learn how to read. And I will say it was one of the more difficult classes I took because it was so nuanced. And so I applaud you for trying to bring phonics back, because I absolutely think it's a necessary thing. My question is, do we have any statistics over the years that show the effects of taking phonics out? So do you have any numbers that show what it was like, what our reading proficiency was prior to taking it out and what it is now?
Well, I don't have those readily available. I can find those for you, but I do know this. Mississippi in 2013 instituted the science of reading, which is all these things. In that decade, Mississippi's NAEP scores in reading have risen 9 points. In that same time period, we've dropped 6. So, Mississippi, we all, I think, in the South have made the jokes about Mississippi, and now here we are looking to Mississippi because they are zooming ahead of all of us.
I agree. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we've got a sign-up sheet, and I think Buddy Castelli is the first one that's... Costly is the first one. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping, because we've got so many people that want to speak, and we want to hear every one of you guys, because I know what you have to say is extremely important. We're going to limit the discussion to 2 minutes each. So please come to the microphone, and you got it. Thank you. And state your name, introduce yourself, and begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to thank Representative Ballard and actually Chairman of the Subcommittee Ballard and the rest of the committees for allowing us to have the opportunity to speak today. My name is Robert Buddy Costley, and I represent the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders, which is approximately 3,000 school assistant principals, district office leaders, curriculum directors, and superintendents. So just about everybody that's going to have a hand in implementing this policy is a member of Gale, and we represent their stories. The very first thing that I want to say is, when I've been working, this is my 4th year, so I still consider myself a rookie as a lobbyist. I was a superintendent in Georgia and a principal myself, and a British literature teacher. When you look at the legislative process, Representative Ballard has been extremely collaborative with our organization. I just want to thank Representative Ballard for reaching out to us. They spent all the time that we could have possibly asked for them to spend on our feedback. And as we've seen this bill make transition from its original form to its current form, we have seen many what we feel are improvements that will, not improvements for Gale, but improvements for kids and improvements for the staff that will be implemented. So I will close by saying this. I just want to say thank you for the process. We too want to be at the table with you, because this bill and many other initiatives, there will be literacy conversations that we need to have together, and that our people will have the expertise to help you have that policy. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Amy Sharmar. Jack, oh, I'm sorry. Jack Powers. Got that right.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. My name is Jack Powers, and I'm the Southeast Regional Advocacy Director for an organization called the Foundation for Excellence in Education in Action, or ExcelinEd in Action for short. And I'm here to voice our enthusiastic support for House Bill 538, known as the Georgia the Georgia Early Literacy Act. I want to just open by telling a personal story to kind of get at why I support this legislation. I began my career in education as a classroom English teacher in Clarksdale, Mississippi, a small town in the Mississippi Delta, and I taught high school seniors. And I could tell the elementary school that my seniors attended based on the instructional strategies that that were used to teach them how to read. I had students who could read paragraphs from authors like William Faulkner out loud perfectly, and they couldn't answer a multiple choice question right about the paragraph because they could recognize the words and read them out loud, but they had not been taught how to sound words out for themselves and comprehend what they were reading. So The way that students learn to read will affect them all the way through their journey, through high school and even into post-secondary. So that is why we support a statewide approach to literacy reform. The lucky thing is we do know how students learn how to read, and that's another reason we support this bill. It would encourage Georgia schools and teachers to ground early grades literacy instruction in the science of reading, structured literacy, and foundational literacy skills, some of which have already been mentioned, so phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and comprehension. I just want to reiterate, contrary to what you may hear, reading does not come naturally like speaking. There are not multiple ways that students learn to read. There may be a couple of different instructional strategies to get to comprehension, which is the end goal, but science has taught us how to read. And this legislation emphasizes the science of reading. It emphasizes adopting high quality instructional materials that align to the science of reading and phonics. And so again, that is why we support it. The second thing that I'll call out, the second reason we support this legislation is it provides transparent data for parents and families. Georgia's fourth grade NAEP scores show that the state is in fact in a literacy crisis, and this bill provides literacy screeners and other avenues to inform parents of how their student is progressing to read. I'll end on saying this: Georgia is not alone in tackling this issue. Every single state that touches Georgia has also embarked on this path of reforming early literacy at the state level. And so just again, to reiterate, Excel in Ed in Action supports this legislation. Thank you, sponsor, for bringing it. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, Jeff Hubbard. And please limit your comments to 2 minutes.
You must remember me from when I was GA president 15 years ago. Good afternoon, Representative Chokas. I'm Jeff Hubbard representing GAE today, but a 38-year veteran of the classroom, currently serving as an 8th grade social studies release teacher from Cobb County. This is a great bill and idea. However, GAE respectfully believes it's still a work in progress. And although we know the timing is late, we do know that the representative has made many changes to it. There are still a couple of concerns that we have that we hope can be addressed to it. The first problem that we saw was from lines 147 to 158, in where in the legislation it said each system would have to provide with teachers to do the training. If these are Title I literacy coaches, that means that as currently written, that funding would be taken out of federal Title I funding and then be placed upon the state and local systems to fund. And I can tell you, coming from Cobb County with 109,000 students, Superintendent Ragsdale and our board would have to take a long, hard look at the fiscal note that would be. So we would not want any legislation that would take funds, federal funds out of Georgia and put it on the backs of Georgia taxpayers. The second thing is, although we know testing is important, 38 years as an administrator, as a classroom teacher, 3 times per school year, K2, K3, we've got to make certain that we're not taking away the love of reading from children by testing them and exposing them to possible frustration at the beginning of the year. And if anybody's ever been an elementary school teachers having to do dibbles with elementary students, you know what I'm talking about. So while testing is important, we've got to get those data points. We're hoping that could be looked at in regards also with the universal screeners. The one thing that in looking at the substitute that we're looking at also is if a child is in need of additional instruction. I believe this is starting, I'd have to go back and look at my lines, around line 181. If a child needs that additional improvement plan, we already have what's called EIP, Early Intervention Programs, that are at the elementary school level. This almost looks like it would be a double up of services, a double up of paperwork, and our particular elementary teachers are so overburdened right now with paperwork. We think that could possibly go back and see what that could be done to help alleviate that. And also, if a student is on what's called Tier 2 or Tier 3 of the multi-tiered student support system, they have to have a plan in place as well. So we think that is actually a double or triple up on the paperwork. But all being said, this is a vital step in the right direction to address our literacy need. We would just request, and we do recognize that Representative has gone back and made multiple things, but that she would go back and look at some of the potential fiscal problems, and also the fact we want students to learn to love how to read, not to dread how to read. And that happens, and that love of reading is done early on in their careers. With that, we hope that she'll be willing to accept some additional substitutions. Thank you.
Let me just say, we took the literacy coach language out of one part. We just failed to take it out of that second part because it didn't say literacy.
So it can be removed. So it would be a friendly.
I will go back and double check that, but I think we just sort of failed to take it out of that one section.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much,
It
ma'am.
was in there twice and we didn't. So
That works. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Alrighty.
Representative Chokas.
Ms. Dooley? You're gonna have to move this one.
Good afternoon. I'm Caitlin McMundooly from Voices for Georgia's Children. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a former Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at the Georgia Department of Education, as well as the Executive Director for Voices for Georgia's Children. I want to commend the writers of this legislation. It really brings to light a few of the pieces that we see as really necessary for improving literacy among Georgia's children. During my time at the Department of Education, I led a literacy initiative called L4GA. It was the largest statewide experiment in literacy, dealing with 66 school districts, 505 schools in early childhood settings, and over 393,000 students. And we learned that this method of using scientific understandings of foundational literacy skills really does matter. I want to commend the writers who expanded beyond just the 5 areas of the science of reading to include writing, because that's going to be essential, as well as oral language. All of those language skills, I would say, it's extremely essential to including in this bill. The other thing I would say is that you may want to look at the use of universal screeners 3 times a year and reduce that to twice a year if you're going to require a summative assessment at the end of each year. So you could do a universal screener and or formative assessments. Sometimes those might be one and the same. So you may even want to combine that language, that you could have a formative assessment that could act as a universal screener, and then have a summative assessment at the end of the year so that you don't have so many assessments going on at the same time. The coaching is essential, and when we did L4GA, we found that implementation, community participation, access to books, and coaching as professional learning, as well as a system framework for care and learning, were essential. So as you entertain this, I hope that you'll also entertain other ways of lateral thinking about how to improve literacy, such as housing, a 2-gen approach to literacy, expanding early care and learning and pre-K and preschool, as well as coordinating the multi-tiered systems of support that you heard earlier, which is part of state law, along with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ciccavelli? I had to get prompted twice.
You nailed it. You
Thank
nailed
you.
it. I am Margaret Ciccarelli from the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, the state's largest organization representing many classroom teachers that comprise the bulk of our 95,000 educators statewide. I wanted to thank you both as a parent and as a page representative for bringing this legislation. It is high time that we discuss improving literacy practices and how to best meet students' needs in the state of Georgia, and also to say that teachers want the tools to deliver evidence-based reading instruction, and that's exactly how you characterize this legislation. So in the spirit of working together to ensure that we get there, we have some feedback on the bill as we move forward toward our mutual goal of improving Georgia literacy instruction for all students. Please consider the impact on classroom teachers and center them in your discussions. They are the subject matter experts. They will implement literacy initiatives, and it is their relationship with students and their ability to implement what this body passes. Please consider implementation deadlines and both the financial cost and the opportunity cost of what you pass. Consider what work classroom teachers won't be able to do as they retrain in literacy instruction practices and implement those practices and individually assess students. And again, I am not in any way asserting that we shouldn't ask or encourage our teachers to do this or even mandate that they do it, but we have to understand what all they're juggling and make sure that we make space for that and provision for that. Please also provide funding for teachers and for teacher training and professional learning. If we want to focus on literacy, and I think that we all agree that we should, please refrain from passing other education bills that carry a significant state or local cost, and refrain from policies mandating that educators turn their precious time and attention away from literacy and toward compliance with other initiatives, no matter how well intended those other initiatives might be. Failing to do so will no doubt contribute to teacher burnout, which is cited by our members in our surveys this fall as the top reason why they leave the profession. Notably, the top reason educators cite for staying in the profession is their satisfaction from serving students. And that's what this bill is about, and we want to help them strengthen that more. Notably, the same survey indicated that more planning time is the top strategy that educators cite to boost their services to students. And I think we have a bill coming up in committee about that later, but it does play into this legislation here today. And finally, please include classroom teachers on any councils, agency discussions, or implementation. If you need recommendations regarding teachers who can help with this, Paige will be happy to provide suggestions to help us do that. And then I just kind of want to cheer you on at the end of my comments. Even if it takes us until the 2024 session, although we hope we can do it this session, let's keep working and figure this out, because educators, students, and their families need our help. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is John Sonner.
Good afternoon. John Zoner, Executive Director of the Georgia School Superintendent Association. We have, just for reference, we represent 182 superintendents of the state. It's voluntary. They don't have to join our association, but they do it because they want to. I appreciate the bill. As a former special needs teacher, I found that, quite frankly, teachers were not taught to teach reading on a regular basis. Not in every university program is that training available or emphasized. And I think we're probably paying for that now. But I also want to say that it's very refreshing to stand at this podium and not be on the defensive and be on the offense when it comes to literacy, more specifically reading. And I think that one of the other things I want to emphasize is that I appreciate the reference in the bill concerning the consultation with the university system, the PSC, GOSA, RESAs, and more importantly, and probably most importantly, literacy experts. I would hope that we continue to listen to those folks. They're the ones that are dealing with the issues that walk through their doors on a regular basis, and it's all very, very challenging. Kids don't come to school necessarily ready to read. And I think that implementing some evidence-based and some research-based practices will certainly address those needs. So applause and thank you. And thank you to Chairman Irwin, as well as Floor Leader Wade, for receiving our comments and our recommendations for the bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All righty, last up, Michael O'Sullivan. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. First, I just want to say how overjoyed I am that this committee is taking up such an important matter, and our sincere appreciation to the authors of this legislation. This is one of the more monumental bills that you guys will have looked at and considered. The evidence of how to teach reading is clear. We've known it. It's been going on for decades. Evidence upon evidence has shown exactly what we should be doing and how it should be taught in order for a kid to be able to read as well and fluently as they can. And in fact, the more research that exists goes to overwhelmingly support that and show more about how we can continue to teach. So it's evolving, but it's evolving in the same direction. And yet we do have districts and schools and teachers who are allowing ineffective practices to exist. And that shouldn't be the case. Kids deserve to know how to read. I appreciate in this bill how we identify and cling to evidence-based practices, because that's what we should be focused in on. And I want to also highlight that we have well-defined timelines for action, because every year that we push this back, every year that we delay, every year that we leave it up to locals to get their act together or teachers to see the light, is another year in which students have delayed learning. I'd also like to point out, as my last point here, that there's nothing in this bill that's revolutionary. Every state that touches Georgia has done these things. It's not new, it's not, every state. I mean, we are in some cases 20, 25 years behind. And so what we are trying to do here is catch up. We should be leading, but at least we should catch up. So I support this bill. We support this bill. We urge you to move this bill along as quickly as you can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that's it. That's it as far as the presenters are concerned. Number 17. I'll get to you in just a second. Oh, well, that was about to say, yes, ma'am. Number 17.
Thank you. I guess you did. We're really excited, right, about this. We really are. So, my concern is if we don't provide some funding, that it may limit the impact. Because like I said, I have 3 different school boards because I got 3 different counties, and each of them are always coming to us wanting more money, right? So we know that there's funding, that they receive funding, but they're always asking for more money. Since literacy is a priority for Georgia, right? What is this going to cost, and how much will Georgia put into the budget to help offset? Because I think this is really, it's critical, it's very important, because we're going to be able to help the earlier kids, and I'll hold my what we're going to do about everybody else. But if we're really serious about this, we have to put some money in it, because then it goes back to the locals saying, hey, you guys have given us another unfunded mandate. So what is it going to cost? And is there an opportunity to fund at least partially of getting this up and going?
And when I met with the representative from Gale yesterday, that we took out the unfunded mandates for literacy coaches, because that's a very specific thing. And so I don't know that right now we will have that, because the local districts will be purchasing whatever curriculum they want with their regular purchases. So, absolutely, we at some point we will revisit that funding, I think. But right now, I think that we've worked really hard. I've worked really hard with several people across the spectrum to take out what was the unfunded mandates, or what they perceive to be that. So,
all right, it's the time. What's the pleasure of the committee? Number 28.
I make a motion to pass.
Motion do pass. Is there a second? Second, multiple seconds. Great. All right. Any further discussion? Number 25. Okay. Good. All right, no further discussion. Well, here's the time. All right, all those in favor of House Bill 538 LC 491384S, receive the due pass designation, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Congratulations.
Okay, and now, okay.
My apologies, but what was the section that you said that may have been, because we passed it as it was versus you said there was something that you guys may still have in here?
Okay, we are going to move on to HB 537. And I'm going to call up Representative Evans. And Representative Evans, I have LC 491371S. Okay. Okay, anytime you're ready. Let me turn your, there you go.
Thank you so much, Chair Ballard. Yes, and it's so good to be with you colleagues today to present to you House Bill 537, and I'm reading from LC 491371S. And this is a companion bill to Representative Ballard's bill. It's a literacy bill. And I just wanted to take you all on a little bit of a journey. I've given you two handouts. One is about evidence-based literacy in Georgia, and you'll see that there's a graph, and this is something that Representative Ballard was unfortunately alluding to, and that is that 2/3 of our Georgia fourth graders are not fully literate. They're not proficient readers. And this is something I remember when I first joined the Education Committee back in 2018 when the Partnership for Excellence in Education told us that, and just how, horrified I was about that, and wanted to understand that situation a little bit better. And if you want to flash forward to summer of 2021, there are so many wonderful education groups, in our state. But there's a new nonprofit, Science for Georgia, which they're wanting to make sure we have, a prepared workforce for our STEM careers. And so they had some workshops that summer, and all about different ways we can improve our educational system. And then they had a roundtable, and Representative Matthew Gamble and I attended that. And then we went around the room and talked about what we want to work on. And we said we want to work on literacy. That was the number one thing. And so for the next year, there was a lot of interviewing with different wonderful groups. And I did email you all, or at least I asked Ms. Latrice to send you all some links. I really hope you have a chance to download those articles. It's some really good information that was compiled. And we were going to do the literacy study committee last year, and unfortunately we just met once and we weren't able. So all that has gone into the thinking about what we can do right now. And so this bill is a very simple bill, basically. Well, and actually I want to back up. So as you know, the Senate did some hearings, and Chancellor Perdue, came and spoke to the Senate about literacy. And so this bill is a simple bill. It basically is a way for us to make sure that our teaching certification is aligned with evidence-based literacy standards. And so I will just walk you through the bill really quick. If you look in section 2, literacy does begin at birth and goes up, through, early adulthood. So we are including DECAL in this bill, asking that at least 20% of the annual training requirements for child care centers include developmentally appropriate evidence-based literacy methods. And I want to back up a little bit, and this just once again goes with what Representative Ballard was talking about. When we talk about evidence-based literacy, let's see if I wanted to just say that includes the acquisition of language, phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics and spelling, fluency, vocabulary, oral language, comprehension, intersection of reading and writing, and then utilization of literacy instruction in other subjects such as science and history. So anyhow, I wanted to make sure that we knew we had that same comprehensive definition. But anyhow, so section 2 refers to DECAL, and then section 3 is very simple. It just refers, actually differentiated learning, we weren't talking about that, but it just got moved around in the bill. So we actually did make one small change at the request of some folks from Decoding for Dyslexia. And number 1, in differentiated instruction, we've removed learning styles because that's a type of differentiated instruction that has not been research based. So we removed that. But anyhow, then it defines all these terms for evidence-based literacy instruction. One other thing I'll just say too is we talk about science of reading as well, and in my mind as a layperson, they're interchangeable, and Representative Ballard and I went through, and both our bills include all the same components. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And then basically, we're just saying that on the GACE test that our teachers need to take to be certified, they need to be aligned with evidence-based literacy standards. And we worked with GAE on this, and their English language and arts, their ELA standards will be rolling out, and we made our time frame meet their ELA standards time frame. So they're in support of this bill. And then it also talks about when teachers are upping their recertification, that if you're a K through 5 teacher, 25% of the testing needs to be aligned with evidence-based literacy instruction, and if you're a 6th through 12th grader, 10% needs to be based on evidence-based literacy. So that is the bill, and I also I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Representative Adena.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
So in terms of the differentiated instruction, are we looking at the teachers to create their own plan, or are we going to get some support from the Department of Education?
Well, as far as differentiated learning, really, this bill wasn't supposed to be about that at all. It just got moved from one section to the other, and so we just took that one term out, but otherwise, I can't address anything else about differentiated instruction.
Okay. So, excuse me, Madam Chair, just one more. So is there any expectation? I know it's additional work on the teachers. What kind of support will they get in doing that?
Well, they've been doing differentiated instruction, and we aren't really changing that. We just removed the reference to learning styles in that definition.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Any further questions from the committee? Representative Carter.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at both bills, and I'm trying to follow. Is this for pre-K?
It's for pre-K and K through 12, yeah.
Okay.
So both. Well, actually, yeah, excuse me. I didn't say that right. It's for DECAL and pre-K through 12. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The Professional Standards Commission does the certification for pre-K through 12.
Okay, because and now I've got both these bills in my head. So if both of them pass, how is this going to impact educators in the classroom?
Well, it just ensures that when, first of all, for our students that are going through school learning to become teachers, it ensures that when they go to get certified as a teacher, that they will be tested on the GACE test. They'll be when they're tested on how to teach reading, that the test will reflect evidence-based literacy instruction models. So and then as far as new teachers, when they go to get certified, that, like if you're a K through 5 teacher, that a portion of that certification will include evidence-based literacy instruction questions, I guess, or whatever. I mean, they'll be tested upon making sure they know how to teach with that model, with those models.
So this will be for universities in the state of Georgia to ensure that they are training teachers since we're local control, we can't dictate what the schools teach, but we can control on the certification test what we're testing them on. Gotcha. So I guess I'm saying if the expectation is that these teachers will be able to pass these certification tests, that they're going to get training somewhere, right? And I think we do have an opportunity to have some influence on the universities in Georgia. And I remember a few years ago that Governor Deal had we either created the Leadership Institute, or there was some talk about
Deal Center
there was some talk about how we could ensure that potential teachers that were matriculating through the state of Georgia would be qualified to teach students in Georgia. So I'm just trying to ensure that we're asking for this, so the teachers, once they graduate, even if they graduate in Georgia, are they going to have to go through another training to be able to pass this, to be prepared to teach our kids?
Well, hopefully not. And I think that this is the right direction. I've been told this is the right direction to go in for us to say this. If we set the expectation, by 2025, that's how they'll be certified. As if they're using it, being tested on evidence-based. If the GACE test is in alignment with evidence-based literacy instruction, then they'll do well. And
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions. We have one person signed up on the sign-up sheet, Amy Sharma. And if you could, we have several other bills to hear today, so if you could keep it to about 2 minutes, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Amy Sharma. I'm the Executive Director of Science for Georgia. Y'all have one of our sheets now. I'm also a mother of the 3 children in the Atlanta public school system. To make this personal, as parents, I've done everything right. My husband's done everything right. We read to our kids every night. We expose them to a rich variety of world. Their teachers are smart, professional, and care deeply. And yet, because Atlanta Public Schools uses non-evidence-based literacy instruction curriculums, 2 out of my 3 kids struggled to learn to read. We have the research demonstrating that using evidence-based best practice in literacy works. The first time for majority of children. This saves money, time, tears, and frustrations. And the reason I'm here today is because educators are our best resource. They are dedicated, they are professional, and this bill seeks to empower them with the best tools and training so they can work with their students to create fully literate citizens. This bill will align certification with appropriate evidence-based instruction techniques. Thus, then, the University System of Georgia will align their education of educators to these techniques, hoping to graduate people that pass the test so they can be certified. If I went to 4 years of school and then couldn't pass this test, I'd be really upset at all that money. Chancellor Perdue mentioned this, and he is working with the PSC right now. So this bill aligns with what the PSC wants, with what the University System of Georgia wants, and it also aligns with how DeKalb is running their training and certification as well. So this is on par, and I just wanted to throw in a few more things. Last year, I served on the House Study Committee on Literacy Instruction. I'm very honored. Thank you. We learned two things because there have been 10 years of ribbon committees, study committees, and a whole bunch of other things throughout the state, right? It's not like this is a new thing that we're talking about. 10 years of committees have all recommended the same things: improved teacher training and certification and coordinating between all the various points in the pipeline. I cannot stress as much the coordination. We have to start when those kids are 0 years old because they lay the foundational literacy. So it's really great that this also addresses decal. And making sure, and this is just it. If we get teachers versed in developmentally and age-appropriate instruction techniques, they're going to be utilizing the practices that enable children to learn. My kid finally became an avid reader because she had a 4th grade teacher from out of state who already had an evidence-based instruction toolkit, went off the grid. And now my kid can't get enough of books, right? So if we equip educators with these skills, even when people scream local control, which is a valid, but it's a thing around here. Even if they're given a crappy out-of-the-box curriculum, they can still pivot and they can still change children's lives. So HR 537 is a great step towards empowering our educators with the best tools possible to educate all our children from age 0 to high school graduation. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much. Now we do have one more. I didn't see this person on the sign-up sheet because we've got a bunch of people. Ellen Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Ellen Reynolds, and I am the CEO of the Georgia Child Care Association, and we represent the owners and directors of the 3,200 licensed child care centers, what you typically think of as your daycare centers, but we prefer to be referred to as child care. And what we love about what Representative Evans has done is that we are recognizing that literacy starts really in the womb, but definitely at birth. So we appreciate that intent very much. I did want to highlight a couple of things that I've spoken with the representative about that we're going to work on, so I don't want to hold up her legislation, but a couple of things that I wanted to share. Obviously, we always prefer training to stay with decal rather than statute because it's harder to change. And just to give you an example, prior to the pandemic, decal restricted the business hours that a person could take to only 2 of the 10 hours. During the pandemic, they realized, we actually need owners and directors who know business and who understand business in order to stay open and to have a thriving center. So they went back and have been revisiting those policies. So anytime you take away that flexibility, it makes us a little concerned. But we absolutely support everyone supports having 2 hours of literacy training. What decal has done really well is offered a ton of free training. I even had my counterpart at North Carolina call me 3 weeks ago and asked to be put in touch with our staff here at decal that does the training because they don't have anything like it. The con side of that is, what I've been told is most of our teachers have exhausted all of the Cox free training that has been offered. And so when we mandate something like this, there's a couple of elements to it. One is that there's not great evidence-based literacy for 0 to 1. So they're probably going to be taking literacy training for 3-year-olds, even though they're dealing with 0 to 1. And then we need more funding with it. If we have experienced teachers that are literate, we're going to have them taking the same training over and over again to check the House Bill 537 box. So we'd love a way for those teachers to be able to be recognized by decal to opt out so that they can put their training hours to better uses that might be a need for social and emotional training because of all the problems we're seeing. And finally, the last piece I would actually ask that be considered, but like I said, we don't want to hold her up today, but we want to make sure that this only applies to teachers and not to our janitorial staff, not to our bus drivers, not to our because it needs a little bit of clarification there. But I do want to say that we are very different from the K through 12 school systems. We don't have a right to operate. We get a license. It is a permission. Unlike K through 12 being a shared partnership between DOE, but also having autonomous local school boards, we don't have that. Decal decides whether you are open or shut. They tell you what curriculums are approved, and you have to live within those guidelines. And I cannot get decal to do a thing that is not evidence-based because Amy Jacobs came out of the Office of Planning and Budget. Everything they do is evidence-based, which I know was one of the concerns that the author had. So I just wanted to share that distinction and how decal's a little different. And so in the interest of time, I'll stop, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that this bill do pass.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. HB 537 has a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, shall this bill now pass? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, now we are moving on to HB 340. And Representative Corbett, Chairman Corbett, you can come on up here. And I've got LC 491385S.
That is the correct
Okay.
sub, Madam
So
Chair.
you can go ahead.
All right. Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Bring before you HB 340, LC 491385S. And you've heard of a previous bill y'all heard today about the teacher burnout. You know, every year, 50% of our teachers leave it in the first 5 years of starting profession. And it's different reasons, testing, and we've done stuff to address that. The evaluation system, and I think the Department of Education has got a pilot program doing there, but I think Madam Chair has a bill to look at that as well, the evaluation system. I think that's a great bill as well to try to help this issue. But another issue that we are addressing in House Bill 340, and that is the planning period that teachers get if they work more than half of the periods. If you have a 6-period day, if they work more than 3 periods, they should have a planning period, and that's what we're doing in this bill. Lines 14 through 19, we're just actually defining a planning period. So actually we have it defined in code what a planning period consists of. And in lines 29 through 35, basically here's where we're establishing in code that they shall be provided a daily planning period. That's in grades, kindergarten through 12th grade. If you work more than 3 out of 6 periods in a day, or more than half of the periods in a day, then you shall be granted a planning period. And like I said, the definition of the planning period tells you what you can do during that planning period. It's not just to do anything you from grading tests, to data analysis, student achievement, growing skills, knowledge, and stuff like that. That's what they're doing on that planning period. It helps them become a highly effective teacher. That planning period, it's been proven to help those teachers become more effective teacher in the classroom. The other thing in the bill, if you turn on the last page, lines 48 and 49, and this is in extreme circumstances, we are granting the school can require a teacher that's entitled to a planning period to actually supervise students, up to one day a week, and also on line 50, if it's necessary to ensure safety of students and staff, they can do it in those times. Also, if it's necessary for a safety situation. But then lines 51 and 52, during planning periods, teachers are encouraged to review the school safety plan and incorporate into its lesson plans as appropriate. So to look over and I think we had a bill on the floor yesterday doing with school safety. This will help just add to that. It's going to keep school safety in every day. You're thinking about safety, either reviewing your safety plan. You allows the teachers to engage in with students and to review the school security plan daily. I have a new legislator that was in the Army, and he said when they was going over to Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, if they do a raid, they would have a mock-up of where they were going, and they would practice it day in, day out, where they knew which way the doors open. They could do it with their eyes closed. So by reviewing the safety plan every day, you keep it at the forefront of their minds, and it also it allows the teachers to hear directly from the students. A lot of times you hear some of these situations out on if they just picked up on some warning signs, but it allows those teachers to hear from some of these students during this time. So it's a pretty simple bill. Just basically, putting in code the planning period, and I think we have several people signed up to speak to this measure, but I'll try to answer any questions if there are any, Madam Chair.
I don't see any I spoke too soon. Yeah, I knew you would have I was wondering. Okay, Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Question, and I don't have the original version because we heard this the other week, this bill, right?
No, we was going to hear it yesterday in subcommittee, and we didn't have the copies of everybody, so it was postponed until today.
I feel like I've heard this bill before, so my question was going to be.
It must be a good bill.
Okay. My question was going to be on line 48 to 50. What I was going to ask you was his added, but prior to the substitute. First of all, let me say thank you. Because I think it is very important that we really get our teachers a break. They need a break, right? My concern is starting with line 44 and defining what's extreme economic conditions. I do like that you restricted that they're, if they have to help out with lunch or whatever, it's one day a week. But I thought it wasn't in there originally. That's why I was thinking it was added. But I do know that they need that. And then 51, 52, is that really necessary?
It does give them some flexibility in extreme conditions where if there's a safety issue, you can throw every rule out the window. I'm gonna do whatever we have to keep those students safe, and that's the intent of those lines there. That'd be an extreme condition. That's not the norm, and we've worked with GAE, Page, Superintendents Associations, and all of them are lined up to speak to the bill to
Right.
get the language in here that it gets everybody to a point we can live with. Do we have everything everybody wants? No, but we got to a point where everybody, I think, is happy with what's in the bill, and they will speak to that.
Yeah, I just don't want an administration to abuse that time that the teachers really need, but more concerning is during the planning period. The planning period is the period where we're giving them the free time, right?
Well, it defines what they can do in that plan period. It's not just if you read on lines 14, it tells you provide instruction to students responsible, participating in activities that are part of the established duties of a teacher, included but not limited to instructional lessons design, where they're designing a lesson plan. They're grading papers, their data analysis on students' achievements, growing skills. That's what they're doing during that time. Where and most teachers work way over there. They take it home with them and do it. But this is to help them. They do this, a lot of this, and this is in addition to the lunch period that they get as well.
Okay, no. I just wanted to make sure that we were going to give them the space
Okay.
to have some time.
Yeah.
That we weren't really taking it away from them, or it could be. So, but I get it. I do like the bill.
Well, thank you.
Okay, don't see any more questions. We have several people signed up to speak, and as a reminder, please keep your remarks to 2 minutes because we do have another bill after this. Buddy Costley, did he have to slip out?
I'm pinch hitting. I'm not Buddy Costley. Will never claim to be. But I will say that Gail, GSSA supports the bill the way it is written, and I appreciate Chairman Corbett, who has certainly adjusted some of the language, and I think it's become very, very beneficial to not only to the points that were made earlier about having some concerns about teachers and planning. I think it protects teachers' planning time, but also balanced out, it protects the students when it comes to school safety. So that's got to be our priority. And as a former principal, and my job would have been primarily to protect students and my staff. So I think this bill does that, and I think, again, I appreciate the language changes. And on behalf of Gail and GSSA, we certainly support the bill the way it is written.
Thank you so much. Jeff Hubbard? You only use half your time. You get an A there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Hubbard, GAE. We're in support of this bill. We only have one major request or recommendation. As you know, OCGA 20-2-218 states that every teacher in K-5 who gets the daily lunch period of 30 minutes per day, unfortunately, in strategic waiver systems and in charter systems, they'll do away with that. So we would hope that in this legislation that as part of the GAE recommendation that this would strengthen the duty-free lunch law for K-5 and create the mandatory planning time. The only request we would have that the committee would make to the Speaker of the motion, and we're deeply grateful for him bringing this forward, would be 5 words. This legislation cannot be wavered. It cannot be wavered. As I said earlier, for 38 years as a teacher and as an administrator, we realized there were times that we had to bring teachers into meetings as an administrator, but I also, as a previous speaker spoke, Mr. Zahner, that is our planning time. That is the time that we work on our IEPs. That's the time that we work on strengthening our instruction, that we do data analysis for our children. So please make it to where it is the time for the teachers to do what they do best, and that's to serve the children. With that, we would ask also to look at expanding duty-free lunch to all K-12 educators because the middle school teachers and the high school teachers need a little love too to be able to eat on their own as well. With that, we support the bill, and we thank the representative for bringing it forth.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Tiffany Taylor.
Good afternoon. I'm Tiffany Taylor with the Georgia Department of Education. I think, like my colleague spoke earlier, many thanks to Representative Corbett for his collaboration on the bill and his assistance. We are in support on this bill and supporting the planning time for teachers and the duty-free lunch for teachers, having heard from our educators. So on behalf of State School Superintendent Richard Woods and the Georgia Department of Education, we are in support of this bill.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Deanna Harris.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I am Deanna Harris here on behalf of Educators First, and we worked very closely with Chairman Corbett to put this language forward, written into the duty-free legislation. We are very excited for it to be heard in this committee, and we support this bill a whole lot. Of course, as everyone knows, we are having a very hard time with retaining teachers throughout the state, from metro to rural counties. And this just gives us an opportunity to kind of help stop that issue. And as before, we've heard several bills in this committee that implement new curriculum ideas and new agendas for teachers, but it doesn't really give them any time to plan for that. So this will help support those new curriculums and new learning plans that we have, but also give the teachers time to get it together and be able to make that happen. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Margaret Ciccarelli?
We're going to say it over and over again, and by the end of the session, you nailed it, just like Chairman Chokas did. Thank you so much, Chairman Corbett, for bringing this legislation. Again, I represent about 95,000 educators throughout the state, most of whom are classroom teachers. And the survey data that I mentioned earlier that I'll be happy to provide y'all with of our educators statewide, and we had about 6,000 of our 95,000 participate this year. And planning time was the #1 strategy they cited in helping prevent teacher burnout and also helping to provide service delivery for students, because planning time it is about what adults need, but it's about planning for what kids need. So connecting those two things is really important. Like Jeff Hubbard from GAE, I will say that we have concerns about the waivability of this. And y'all should know, as with every mandate we put in Title 20, if you put it in a way that it can be waived by charter districts and strategic waiver districts, and I would add that that's all but 2 districts in the state have some flexibility contract. It can be waived. Now, that being said, we don't want to hold up this bill. Like, if it's going to cause heartburn with our partners in the education community, to exclude waivers. You know, we will move forward with it as is, but we are grateful for the focus on this. And particularly if we pass the great legislation that that we all think we need regarding literacy instruction, planning time is going to be even more important. So thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you so much. Our last speaker for this bill is Dr. Al Pollard.
I appreciate this opportunity. I'm here on behalf of Educators First. In representation, I am a retired superintendent, retired principal, retired football coach, and baseball coach, and track, tennis, whatever else you want to do. But my grandchildren enjoy me a little bit more anyway. But as you know, the intent of the bill is to help lower the teacher attrition rate, and that is obviously very, very important in this time and day. Most states have already done it in law. We're just following suit. And teachers do cite lack of planning time as a major issue as far as staying in the profession, and we can't afford to lose any more of them. It also helps you to build a climate that's suitable for having a good workforce there when they have their planning time, the time to do whatever it may be that they need to get done during the day. And that can be up 1,000 different things at different times. Who knows? The safety component built in is important, as we well know, and we can never underestimate that importance, too, as a part of the bill as such. At Pulaski, where I was superintendent, we did have all these things. We did have duty-free lunch. We did do that. We did find it very good for our teachers to have that opportunity, per se. And I do think it should be a part of the system, per se, if we're going to protect all of our teachers in the future. And that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do we have any further questions? Oh, okay. I'm going to let, you went last time. I'm going to let whoever, number 28, is that Representative Daniel?
It's me. Chairman Corman, somebody brought up a good point about it only including teachers from kindergarten through 5th grade for the duty-free lunch periods. Is there a reason that middle school and high school teachers are not included?
And I might have to phone a friend that's sitting by you to answer that question for me.
Oh, no. Chairman Irwin, I suppose. All right, so down here in lines 57 and 58, it talks about duty-free lunch periods for classroom teachers in grades kindergarten through 5th. But my question is why middle school and high school teachers are not also included in that?
And you got to understand the difference between a middle school or high school, Mr. Chairman, and an elementary school teacher who is self-contained with the kids in that fashion. It's even difficult if she doesn't have parapro to find time to go to the bathroom. That's right. And so that law is supporting those teachers that can't really take their eyes off the kid at any time during the day. Whereas high school teachers and middle school, as you know, kids are changing classes and they're rotating, so there's an opportunity to build in the schedule for them to have lunchtime and get there. So if you're asking me the question, Representative, I'd say that it is not needed nearly as much as it's needed in elementary school to have it in this bill. But it's still a good question. And I know you've been there too, so you know that.
Is it not possible that middle school and high school teachers are required to do duties during their lunch period?
Yes, they're obviously carrying their classes down there to there, and then they usually have monitors in the cafeteria that are watching the children while they either eat on stage or eat somewhere else. So, or the teacher's area of eating. So, yes, they could pull them during that time too and assign them, but that I don't think that's a common practice, and probably also not a very safe thing to do would be to assign your other teachers duties. They rotate those type of duties in high school, as you can imagine, like after school when it's parking lot duty. So we all had those when I was a teacher.
Thanks for the help.
Representative Carter.
Thank you, because I've cracked myself up over here. I'll tell you later what. But my question to the author of the bill is that would you consider a friendly amendment by adding that this legislation would not be subject to the waiver?
You know, me personally, probably, but after working with everybody involved, like I say, I think we come to a good point where we got everybody to a point they could live with. We didn't have everybody everything they want. So I would wish we could, but I think if you get one on board, you're going to lose somebody else. And in danger of losing the whole bill, I'd rather, take what we can get. It's what would be my answer.
Okay. So we've asked all our questions now. Who's? Oh.
That was it.
Okay. Okay. So she beat you to it this time. Is there? We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? Second. Y'all are tickling me. HB 340 has a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Y'all are cutting up here in the afternoon. Okay, we are on our last bill now. We are looking at HB 506. I'm going to call up Representative Earhart.
Just a little bit here.
And I am looking at LC 491363S.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Go. Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. And just I want to thank the subcommittee here today for being here, and just to remind you what a privilege it is, or what a privilege I consider to bring to you legislation that I believe can make a pivotal difference in the state of Georgia, and certainly as regards to our school-aged children. Regarding HB 506, last year, Speaker Ralston formed a study committee on accreditation, and I had the privilege of serving on this subcommittee, study committee, chaired by Chairman Irwin, and alongside Chairman Dubnik, Corbett, and Representative Maynor. You know, interestingly, in my district, I represent the western part of Cobb County, and I've said this before, if you were to ask my constituents 2 years ago who accredited their school system, I don't know that many of them outside of the education world could have told you or would have had any idea. Fast forward now 2 years, and many folks in my part of the district are well aware of accreditation and the importance of it, and the effect that it could have, meaning the accreditation itself or the lack thereof, or the threat of the lack thereof. Nearly all public schools in Georgia are accredited by either Cognia or the Georgia Accrediting Commission. Some schools have dual accreditation. Interestingly, and actually unknown to me more than 2 years ago, but now I know there is no requirement in Georgia that public schools be accredited. Admission to our Georgia public universities or technical colleges does not require that applicants have graduated from an accredited high school. So if a student can graduate from an unaccredited high school and also gain admission to a Georgia public university, then why is accreditation so important? And why is it such a focus for so many parents, students, and the public schools that they attend? There are 3 reasons for this. The first, and many consider the most important, in order to be eligible for the Hope Scholarship in Georgia, students in Georgia must graduate from an accredited high school. Also, many private colleges, both in-state and out-of-state, do require accreditation for admission. Many believe that accreditation provides also that extra stamp of approval that a certain level of academic excellence is being met by that school. These are some very compelling reasons for accreditation, and given that we as members of the Georgia General Assembly are tasked with ensuring a quality education for all Georgia students, I believe it's a worthy task that we address some significant issues with the private organization that currently controls accreditation of our Georgia public schools. Our largest accreditor is Cognia, which is, as defined, a private entity funded by Georgia taxpayer dollars by way of our public school systems. It is an independent, unelected entity receiving no oversight of any kind from the State Board of Education or the Georgia General Assembly. It is wholly and completely unregulated. It has no accountability to any elected body or any state agency in Georgia. Cognia sets its own standards for accreditation review with no input or guidance from any state agency or the Georgia General Assembly. By its own admission, it believes it is not subject to open records request, despite receiving public funds. Additionally, Cognia does not allow for an external or third-party appeals process for any school system that disagrees with the findings of their review. The only path forward for appeal is within Cognia itself. The appeals process, like all other aspects of the accreditation process itself, is controlled by Cognia. Additionally, Cognia engages in the practice of selling improvement services. They could be services, they could be materials, they could be training, to the very same school systems that they are tasked with reviewing for accreditation. So essentially, they are, 1, conducting the accreditation review based on standards that they set, 2, rendering findings to that review, which typically does involve some recommendations for improvement, and then 3, marketing and selling their own services, presumably to help those schools fix whatever problems Cognia found during the review. Folks, this is a conflict of interest. And members of the committee, I've just described to you an organization that wields a tremendous amount of power over our public school systems, and by extension, our own students. HB 506 seeks to address these concerns by providing some guidance and guardrails to this taxpayer-funded accreditation process so that Georgia does not abdicate something as important as Hope Scholarship eligibility to an unelected private entity. The bill creates a new article in code that does the following, and I'm going to kind of move through the bill and provide some overview. I would be remiss if I didn't first introduce Gretchen Walton. I apologize for not doing that at the very beginning. Gretchen is a learned attorney and works in compliance, legal, and legislative affairs for the Cobb County School District. Thank you for being here. In our bill, starting on line 60, HB 506 defines what a recognized accrediting agency should be, what it is, defines it. Lines 88 to 105 sets forth that the State Board of Education shall establish accreditation criteria, which is 80% based on the academic quality of the school district, including but not limited to student achievement, achievement gap closure, and student progress. Also 20% based on the financial efficiency of the school district and how state and federal funds spent by the district impact student achievement.
Representative Earhart, let me
Yes.
just stop you just a second. You're on such a roll. We have had a copy problem, and we did not receive your whole bill.
Oh, no. Do you
It
have the
copied
sub?
wrong.
Do you have
we
the
have like every other page.
Oh, my. That would make for some frustrated reading. I'm sorry that happened.
If you'll give me just a couple minutes, I can get this handled. It's not very big.
Okay. Okay. We'll just stand in recess just for a few minutes till we get these copies done. Thank you.
That's right. I think you told me that. I used to live over there. Raised my kids over there.
So,
Everybody, right?
especially when they're younger, they're like, Mom, aren't you a teacher? That's not mine, even though I did all these things. I have two accomplishments. Thank you. You know what? They all love reading. And they all understand the value of sleep. I mean, those are my two great accomplishments. Like,
And you know what? I think your appreciation for both of those things increases as you get older.
absolutely.
I love to read.
Me too. Me too.
You're out and done.
Do I need to round anybody? You got the people here to get to stand there?
I got the plan. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Well, we just don't need anybody. We don't need anybody to leave.
Yeah, okay.
My friend, how are you?
Good, you're doing a bang-up job.
Oh, aren't you sweet? Thank you.
You really have a great delivery. I'm not just saying that.
Thank you for that. I was just telling Gretchen, I feel like that's more my strength, whereas, but when it gets down to getting in the legal nuances and things, I'm always grateful to have someone like Gretchen by my side.
So who's going to be talking against it?
Oh, nobody knows. All right. Always better to have more options than you.
For you. I'm just wanting to get where you are to take a few pictures of them.
Oh, them, yeah. Trying to figure out a way to get out of it. What's her name, Bethany?
Let's see, here we are. I think I was just about to kind of talk through the bill a little bit, and what I'm going to do is kind of cover this, and then I want to pass the microphone to Gretchen to kind of give you a little overview from her school side and her unique perspective as well. In reference to everything that I've talked about so far thus far, it's worth noting that HB 506 is designed to address specific concerns and issues, both that arose and came to our attention during our study committee, and also from testimony that we heard certainly during testimony we heard from school superintendents, we heard from Cogni themselves, So certainly identifying those areas where we feel our students have a right for the General Assembly to have a look at this. I'm not calling it the Wild West of accreditation, but I will tell you there is a serious lack of oversight, and it can have a tremendous effect on students, most primarily as it relates to the qualification for the Hope Scholarship. And I think it's always nice to be able to have maybe a personal example to kind of hang out there, because we can talk about these all day long, but when does it, what does it look like when it affects real children? And I can tell you, and it's no secret, it's been covered in the press, my home county, Cobb County, where I've lived since I was 12 years old, was the subject of an unscheduled and, in my opinion, unwarranted special review less than 2 years ago. And what was the effect of that? Well, there was a fear of a loss of accreditation. You understand, we're talking about one of the top school systems in the state, certainly one of the largest, a fine school system. And the subject matter of the accreditation, the impetus, really, for the special accreditation review had nothing to do with academic performance, had nothing to do with the performance of the schools, had nothing to do with financial integrity of the school district. In this particular case, it was for nothing more than some really political infighting on the school board, regardless of which side. I don't believe it's the thought that of any member of the Georgia General Assembly that our children's qualification for Hope Scholarship should ever be in jeopardy or threatened by a loss of accreditation based on something that the child can't control, certainly is not their fault. And so I think putting some parameters and guidelines in place will help reassure both students, school districts, and the state in general that we have our children's best interests at heart. I will mention also during our study committee something that Chairman Irwin said, and he prefaced really at the very first meeting that we had that everything we are doing, everything that we are looking at as we turn over rocks and discuss the process of accreditation in Georgia needs to be done with a singular focus on student achievement, keeping those kids in our focus. And as we make determinations and discuss problems with accreditation, what can we do to make things right for our kids? And I think that's profound, and that has stuck with me. We define on line 60 what a recognized accrediting agency is. Lines 88 through 105 set forth that the State Board of Education shall establish accreditation criteria. I think I mentioned before, I just don't know if you had it in front of you. Essentially 80% based on academic quality of the school district. Now this would include, but not be limited to, student achievement, achievement gap closure, and student progress. 20% of that accreditation criteria would be based on the financial efficiency of the school district and how state and federal funds are being spent by the district and how that impacts student achievement. On lines 106, we established some additional parameters that I think are important. Clearly, any accrediting agency to be recognized as one needs to demonstrate the ability and the experience to operate as a recognized accrediting agency. Line 108, that the principal purpose of that agency is to accredit students. In other words, this isn't a side gig. This is their primary purpose. Line 110, such an agency has a voluntary membership of public and secondary schools. I think that's important to recognize also because remember, accreditation is not required in the state of Georgia. It is a voluntary measure. Moving along, lines 117, and this is important, addresses the concept of due process, something that does not exist currently in the accreditation process. And that would mean that throughout the accreditation process that the accrediting agency is adhering to due process measures. For example, allowing for a hearing, the right to appeal, the right of a school district to be represented by counsel. Those are important points. Moving along to line 140. This particular language here, and I think is important, and it speaks to what I mentioned earlier. It would prohibit the agency from selling any services or materials to the school district that are intended to address any deficiencies or recommendations resulting from the agency's review. Line 159, let's see here, moving along. No divisive concepts as currently defined in Georgia Code Section 20-111 shall be included in the criteria for accreditation. Lines 162, that the State Board of Education shall determine compliance with the accrediting provisions of this law. Lines 195, a very important point, and I think something that there's a reason why this is here is because one of the frustrations of some school districts has been the lack of what they consider to be an appropriate and neutral, impartial appeals process. So in line 195, it provides for an appeals process through the creation of an accreditation committee established by the State Board of Education in case there is a dispute between the school and the accrediting agency over the results of the review. The goal here, and as outlined in the bill, is the concept is that the accreditation committee would work together with the accrediting agency and the school. If resolution cannot be found, that it could move into a mediation process, right? And depending on the findings of the mediation, if that is still in dispute, the mediation could then further be appealed to the State Board of Education, Board of Education for a final determination. So members of the committee, I want to first of all thank you so much for listening to all of this, and I thank you for your willingness to be here and clearly, partner with us perhaps in finding a solution to what has been, I think, it's a subject matter that hasn't garnered a lot of attention from the General Assembly. I've said in reflection on what has happened certainly in Cobb County that I think accreditation was kind of flying under the radar for quite a long time. A lot of times we don't realize we have a problem until a problem reveals itself. And so I would certainly ask you to thoughtfully and carefully consider making some resolutions here and allowing the accreditation process at the very minimum to have some simple guardrails and guidelines based on and accountability. Because what you've got here again, to kind of put a finer point out here at the end, is you've got an unelected body wielding a tremendous amount of power over our public school systems with no accountability to elected officials in the state of Georgia. What I'd like to do now, if I could, is pass the microphone to Gretchen Walton. She's going to share a little bit about her thoughts of HB 506.
Good afternoon, almost evening. I thank you for allowing me a minute to offer my support for this bill and offer the school district support for this bill. We appreciate Representative Earhart's bringing it for your consideration. We, with local district decision making, we have a number of things that we have to think through, right? And we always start with what's good for kids. And then obviously there's the law, state policy, local policy, and then there's accreditation. And the question that, really this bill is going to help give some clarity to is what happens when there's a conflict between any of those? Are we willing to risk kids getting into college? Are we willing to risk my junior in high school not having the hope in 2 years? That is the big question. And you may be thinking, well, it's pretty obvious. Well, state policy will rule. Well, local policy will rule. There's a lot at stake for kids here and zero oversight of a body that can take that away. They can literally just come in for 110,000 kids in our case and send in, 7 to 12 people for 18,000 employees and say, these 7 to 12 people now are saying your kids can't have the hope. So it is a very big deal, the oversight and offering due process and offering a way to appeal all the elements of this bill. It's one thing to say that accreditation is voluntary. The reality is, if it's required to get into college, which it is outside of the state for a number of colleges, if it's required to get the HOPE monies, is it really voluntary? And are we willing as a state to then cede all of the oversight and responsibility to a group of people that we have no control over? And that is what I wanted to share, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Chairman Irwin.
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Chair. Thank you. Chairman Earhart, can we look at part of your bill and let me offer what I would consider a friendly compromise here with you based on what I'm reading? Can we look at line 104?
Yes.
Having been involved heavily with the financing in a school system, 20% just is not big enough for me. That is such a valuable piece. It has to be paid attention to on an hourly basis to be successful, to be sure that the money that you have is being used to educate the children in the best fashion possible. So, of course, that's going to affect line 96, which you have on here too. But would you be amenable to an amendment, again, a friendly amendment, to take up that 20% to 35%, thus making the line 96 to 65%?
Thank you, Chairman Irwin, and I am amiable to that suggestion. I recognize the merit in it. I know that was something that actually had been considered before. I recognize that understanding how important that fiscal responsibility piece is, I certainly am open to that friendly amendment. Thank you.
Do you mind if we ask Mr. Walker back there if we could just make the number changes in this bill that I recommended?
As far as the language of the amendment, Mr. Chairman, yes, that's how it would be done once you get to that posture for suggesting the amended language.
At that appropriate time.
Change 80 to 65 on line 96 and change 20 to 35 on line 104.
Okay. That was the clarification I just needed before we moved on.
Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will say that I've been here, this is my 8th year in the legislature, my 7th year on this committee, and this is not the first time that this has come up. We actually had, with Chairman Coleman, we actually did have some brief discussion, because I think we had a presentation by, Cognia, am I saying it right? Mm-hmm. A few years ago. And what came out of that, and I think your bill is trying to address it, but from what I remember, the accreditation agreement didn't include anything academic, if I'm saying it correctly, but it was mostly addressing the administration, thereby why school districts like DeKalb or Clayton County would lose their accreditation based on issues that the board was having. So I guess and I'm trying to understand, did we have the agreement with Cognia to provide the accreditation at the level that they did because of legislation, or was that the agreement that was proposed at the time?
Right, and I probably am going to pass this to Gretchen to let her answer that, but I do want to kind of weigh in that, the decision to partner with Cognia, that's a school-by-school decision. Essentially, I mean, there are some schools in the state that because we have the other accrediting agency, which is a very small accrediting agency, Georgia Accrediting Commission. So my understanding is that decision is left up to the individual school. Whether or not, my understanding is we have not put any parameters of any kind up until now, that no current parameters exist in code that say this is the criteria that we that Georgia accepts for accreditation.
Okay.
It's essentially, it's a void. It's an absence of any language in there. But I do want to pass it to Gretchen, because she may have a little more because that is a little bit before my time, so I want to make sure.
And I want to just make sure I understand the question. The question is, can you restate
So
it
what
for
I
me?
understood about the accrediting agency back from discussion we had several years ago was that I guess the services that had been acquired, and I thought it was at the state level, was that they were only looking at maybe the administration, whatever allowed them to just look at the school boards. And so, and I was asking, how did we come to that point that this is the standard that we would accredit our schools? And I think Chairman Earhart has already, she said it wasn't codified, so someone made that decision back then, and we know we need to do something.
Correct. There is nothing in the code, and so as Cognia changes their standards, they do have standards, and any accrediting agency. So let's take it away from Cognia, right? So there's no guardrails, there's no oversight anywhere. So whoever came in and was going to do the accreditation, they actually decide what the standards are. And when you're thinking particularly about board governance, when you look historically, I would say over the last 20 years at when there have been special reviews and accreditation has been at risk, it's almost 100%. I'm not gonna say 100% because I don't have the full list in front of me, but I can name county after county where there's been a special review, and it was all due to board governance. And in our case, that's an elected body. So you have 7 people, you have 18,000 employees, and you have 7 people who potentially could put that in the accreditation in jeopardy.
Okay, thank you. And I think you already answered my other questions, because I was going to ask were there other agency or how many would the districts have options, and then the chairman addressed the other issues with the percentages. So you guys answered my questions. Thank you.
Representative Maynard, are you 12?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Representative Earhart, for bringing this. It was an enlightening study committee that we did this summer, and I hate that I was bouncing back and forth. It's several committees going on right now. In this bill, does it say anything about the ability to request open records from the accrediting agency?
And I apologize. I think that I skipped right over that. Let me just, 145 to 58. Yeah, I do. Okay, yes, indeed. And I think I honed in on line 147. Thank you, Gretchen. Yes, we do. And that actually was another issue that we experienced in Cobb. And what happened in that particular situation, and it could potentially happen in any school district, was that the impetus for the special review. So Cobb at that point was maybe, and I may not get my numbers exactly right, we were about maybe a year and a half into a 5-year accreditation, right? So we'd been reviewed, the district had been reviewed, should have been good for 5 years. About a year and a half in, we get an unexpected announcement that the school district is going to undergo a special review. And this was based on the board governance issues that we talked about. Now, interestingly, and I know that during our special subcommittee, our study committee, you may recall that we had John Florista from Cobb Schools come and talk about the nature of that complaint and how difficult it was to try to get the report or the complaint from Cognia. They were rather cryptic about it, so they weren't able to obtain that. I know that there were members of the community and our local newspaper that filed an open records request of Cognia, and they did not comply, citing that they were not subject to open records because they were a private entity. Now, the jury is out on that because, they do receive public funds, so there was some question there. So thank you for bringing that up, and I'm sorry that I missed that. I think I skipped right over it when I was speaking earlier. Lines 147 does address the issue of open records. In this particular case, it states in the bill that the agency must give full disclosure to the school system of any complaint or report that prompts an accreditation review, scheduled or unscheduled. So it certainly does, and thank you for mentioning that.
And if I can have a follow-up, is it not true that this body is not condoning any one particular accrediting agency? We're not supporting one and supporting another. That's not what this body is doing. But is it not true that currently the accrediting agencies are going into the school systems? They are saying, this is your assessment, but when they follow that up, they ask for the schools to pay for the accrediting agency to help them fix the problems that were cited. Is that not true?
That is correct, and it's even a little more than that. The school district has to pay also for the privilege of that extra unscheduled accreditation review. So they have to pay for the original review. They have to then, in the case of Cobb, pay for the special review a year and a half later. And then, depending, and I can't speak to the situation with Cobb. In the end, Cobb's special review, I believe, was reversed due to some issues on Cognia's end. But however, certainly in terms of the expense of paying for those services, that is something that school districts do. And oftentimes it is in response to recommendations, areas of improvement that Cognia highlights during that review.
And one last question, if I may. Did you discuss with the committee some of the prices charged in total, like on the high end?
Right, and I may actually pass that to Gretchen. I know that for some school districts, I think the base price is $1,200 for a standard accreditation. I can't speak to that exactly. Per school. Per school.
The problems when they go back.
Oh, you mean the services?
Mm-hmm.
No, I do not know. We don't. I don't believe Cobb has used any of those improvement services. I do know that for Cognia in general, I mean, they are a multi-million-dollar global company. So I do know, clearly they are in the business of both the accreditation and the improvement services. So they.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one more question. One quick one.
Financial question. Okay, so on the, in the bill, I'm sorry, I'm rushing now. So, it looks like the contracts, any contracts that are in place through July 1st, 2023 will stay, and, because that's what I guess I'm trying to make sure we're not going to be disruptive, even though I know they aren't providing full accreditation with everything, but I just want to be clear that we're not being disruptive, and the districts are going to have other companies that they could contract with, and then if they end up with Cognia, it sounds like their hands are going to be tied if they wanted to use Cognia for their corrective action services.
And just, okay, so on the first point, you are absolutely right. The intent of this bill is not to disrupt accreditation that is currently in progress, or if folks are 1 or 2 years into their accreditation. So this would go into effect for any new accrediting, right? Any renewal agreements that occur on or after July 1. That is correct. On the issue of the improvement services, there are a host of educational resources out there for addressing and improving academic performance as related to school districts. Cognia is certainly not the only one. I think what this bill is designed to do is to recognize that when the person that is making a determination about whether improvements are needed is the same entity that is then turning around and selling the prescription to fix that represents a conflict of interest, kind of like your car breaks down in front of a car repair clinic, right? You can't go anywhere else. You're stuck there. You ask for both a diagnosis, and you're pretty much at the mercy in terms of what they're going to recommend and charge for the repair. So, yeah.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. So at this time, I will entertain a motion. We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? Okay. And then, Chairman Irwin, do you want to propose your amendment?
Yes, if we can. Let me go back to line number 96. How about, again, just changing the number to 65, thus changing line 104 to 35%? Is that amenable to you?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Irwin.
That would be my friendly amendment to this bill.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion on that? I think we all kind of agreed on that. All those in favor of this friendly amendment, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. Okay, so the amendment passes. Shall this bill now pass as amended by Chairman Irwin? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I was so excited to leave, I forgot to adjourn the meeting. So we will now be adjourned.